Welcome to the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel, the #1 YouTube channel for you to level up your communication skills, learn the art of public speaking, social skills, and personal branding to take your message to the world. For today's episode, we're entering the world of social skills, and I'm going to be breaking down nerds, dorks, and geeks. These are 3 labels which were considered very mean to call someone in high school, because in high school, we're still trying to figure out our identity. But deep inside, many of us, we still are chasing the identity of the popular kid. We want to be popular, even though many of us in high school didn't want to admit it. And when you did call someone a nerd, hey, you're a dork, you're a geek, it hurt their self-esteem. It hurt it so much to a point when they realized, I'm not going to be popular, am I? This was a very negative label in the high school era. But by the time that you start transitioning into college, things start to change. Nerds, dorks, geeks starts taking up a different context. Because in college, you start having much more freedom. If you do want to hang out with other fellow nerds, go ahead. If you want to be a dork and you embrace it, then party with other dorks. No one's judging you. If you're a geek, then join a club full of other geeks. You see, with the freedom in college and how big college is, there's not necessarily a group that's simply popular. But still, even though you know this, in college, these 3 labels still have a negative connotation. By the time you transition from college into the real world, these 3 labels flip on its axis. Heck, you can use the phrases nerd, dork, geek as a competitive advantage. What do I mean by this? Well, a couple of months back, I was in a presentation where the presenter opens with, guys, you won't believe it, but I am a geek once it comes down to wealth management. A bunch of the audience members were like, he's a geek once it comes down to wealth management? That means he knows what he's talking about. They spring up and they start taking notes the entire presentation. They were highly engaged. This was an example of a presenter who was able to use the label to his advantage. You see, in the real world, we want our subject matter experts, our coaches, our consultants to be a nerd, dork, or a geek because it showcases genuine enthusiasm towards their task. So many people are just chasing a paycheck, while in reality, we want someone who is showing genuine curiosity because we know that they can improve. What does this all go on to show? I mean, in high school, these labels are negative. In college, it's whatever. And in the real world, these labels can be used as a competitive advantage. What gives, Armani? Well, what gives is that in the real world, once you start dealing with more and more humans, you start realizing that labels can help, but it can also hurt. It can also hurt because, as you can tell, it restricts your movements when you don't have the right understanding towards it. In the real world, it's a gray area. You start understanding that there's good kind of weird and there's bad kind of weird. Good kind of weird are what charismatic people are like. Now, at first, you may think charismatic people aren't weird, but they are. They are different. They know how to showcase their authentic personality. Just like our thumbprints are different for every single person on this planet, so are our personalities. No one in this entire planet has had the same experiences and the same takeaways that you have had. Charismatic people understand this to a T, so they're not trying to impress other people. They're just trying to discover who they are, which allows them to be good kind of weird because they're very hard to predict. The bad kind of weird is the weird that you don't want to be. These are the people that are very boring. They don't have much enthusiasm. They're just there. And unfortunately, a lot of shy people fall into this boat as well. Nothing personal against you shy people, because I used to be shy myself. But when you are shy, what's happening is you're too closed off. You're not allowing other people to understand what your personality is like. They can't categorize you as the good kind of weird, which is what you should be striving for. So they just say, you're the bad kind of weird. A lot of people, they're shy because they don't want to be judged. But even when you don't want to be judged, you're still being judged. So start making the transition from the bad kind of weird to the good kind of weird. This is the freedom that every charismatic person has, that anyone can get as long as they understand the frameworks of labels. In today's video, I want to talk to you about being socially awkward, because in reality, there's no such thing. What you consider socially awkward, another person may consider completely fine. And what you consider completely fine, another person may consider socially awkward. You see, labels can either hurt you or destruct you. Let me tell you a story. In undergrad, my advisor was like, "Yo, Armani, you need to get an internship and you need to get it soon because you're about to graduate. And if you don't graduate with an internship, no engineering company is going to hire you. None." He got me scared. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna start applying for different internships. I kept applying, getting rejected, applying, getting rejected, applying, getting rejected. I couldn't even get an interview. Until one day, there was this aerospace company that was like, all right, Armani, we'll give you a chance. And they gave me a shot at an interview. I go to the company and the hiring manager was going to be the person who's going to be interviewing me. He was a short guy with a goatee. His name was John. Seemed like a very pleasant personality. By the time he took me into the interviewing room, I realized not only was he a pleasant personality, he was a very pleasant interviewer as well. He was asking me all the easy questions. Armani, what makes you you? What is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? Blah, blah, blah. Questions that I could answer in my sleep. It's light work. The interviewing is going very smoothly. It's transitioning, and we're about to wind down. As we're about to wind down, out of the blue moon, I hear the door open. And as the door opens, there's this dude that walks in. Short, fat, chubby little dude, looks like a duck, and has a very strong accent. He comes to me and says, "Hello, my name is Braulio. Sorry that I'm late, John." I'm thinking, who the hell is this guy? I hope he doesn't hurt the rhythm of this interview. But you know when you hope for something, in the real world sometimes the exact opposite happens? This was one of those situations. Braulio starts asking me a bunch of difficult questions where I was just like, damn man, I don't know. Very technical questions. What is the processing of this? When was this made? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm just kind of either bullshitting or I'm just saying, I don't know, sir, I'm sorry. And it comes to a point where once the interview winds down, I feel like an idiot. I feel like that I'm not going to get this job. It was very sad. And for the next few days, I didn't get a call back. Those few days turned into weeks, still didn't get a call back. But as the second week turned into a third week, I got a call. It was from John. John was like, "Yo, Armani, I decided that I want to hire you. Do you accept?" I'm thinking, fuck yeah, I accept. I got my first ever internship. Excellent. The next week, I go into the company and John does the whole basics. He starts introducing me to everything and he starts giving me my cube where I'm going to be working. And John starts giving me a lot of the basics. I'm learning, I'm picking up stuff as the next few weeks are going on by. And out of the blue moon, that same dude named Braulio, who was making my life a very miserable hell in the interviewing process, he starts entering the picture during my internship. He starts giving me a lot of tasks as well. Hey Armani, do you mind filling out these Excel sheets? Do you mind debugging this code? Do you mind doing this, that, the third? And I'm thinking, this dude is giving me more work than my hiring manager. As a few days goes on by, John comes to my cube and he's like, "Yo Armani, what are you working on?" I'm like, "Braulio wants me to compile this code." He's like, "Braulio's giving you work? How long has this been going on?" I'm like, "Ever since I got hired." He's like, "Well, Armani, you're my intern. You only need to be doing my work, okay? You don't have to do Braulio's work. I'll let him know." But John was a busy guy and he never let him know. And Braulio kept coming in trying to give me work. And then one day I had enough. I look at Braulio and I'm like, "Braulio, wait. Before you give me all these files, I want to say something." John said, I'm only working for him, that I don't need to take your tasks, so please stop giving me your work. Braulio looks back at me and he's like, all right, Armani, I'm sorry. And he just leaves my cube. That's it? In my mind, I'm preparing for combat, but he didn't say anything bad. And now, for me, I started feeling upset. I felt as though I was a little too harsh on him. And the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate. The next day, I go into Braulio's room to apologize for what happened, but I see Braulio's talking to this one lady. And I was like, oh, sorry to interrupt you, Braulio. Do you mind afterwards if I could talk to you for a second? He's like, hey, Armani, just wait up. This right here is my wife. I have a quick little meeting to go to. Do you mind keeping her some company? And by the time that I get back, we can talk about whatever. I was like, all right. So Braulio starts walking out. And there I see his wife looking at him very admiringly. Like, and she looks back at me. She's like, my husband, he's a very charismatic man, isn't he? And I'm thinking in my mind, Braulio? Braulio's not charismatic. He's a pudgy penguin looking dude, weird as shit. How is he charismatic? But then she starts going off, and I don't want to interrupt her. She's like, you see, back in our home country, Braulio was quite the ladies' man. All the ladies in our village loved Braulio because he could sing, he could dance, he could write poetry. He was the man. Heck, many people thought he was going to be a politician in the upcoming ages because he was so damn charismatic. And she starts telling me all these stories about how charismatic Braulio is in his home country. And I'm starting to think, are we still thinking about the same dude? Because even in our office, we had this joke where we all made fun of Braulio because he was always so stuck up. He was always so pompous. But in the eyes of his wife, Braulio was charismatic. Braulio was the man. And as I was talking to his wife for some time, eventually Braulio ended up coming back into the room and he's just like, hey, he pushes me to the side. He's like, what do you want to talk about? I was like, yo, I'm just sorry for, being rude to you yesterday. Just want to let you know. And eventually we squashed it. As a few weeks went on by, I started to understand what his wife was talking about. I'm not calling him a ladies' man or anything, but what I am saying is that Braulio is someone who did well for himself. He came into a brand new country. He learned the language. He learned how to rise up in the company. And eventually he had teams working underneath him. And eventually I started to learn that Braulio was giving me a lot of this work because he knew that my hiring manager, he was always so busy and he normally, without his intention, would neglect the interns and wouldn't give them too much work. So Braulio was picking up the pace. I started to appreciate Braulio and my entire perspective of him began to change. You see, in the beginning stages, I started to say, this dude is socially awkward because he's not fitting into my paradigm, my reality. While in his wife's eyes, Braulio is like some superhero, some winner. And even though this is very funny to myself and the rest of the people in the office, it's her reality. And that's what charismatic people understand. They will never be able to appeal to everyone's reality. You see, with my voice, certain people, they DM me, they hit me up on the side and they're like, dude, your voice is very unique, it's very musical. I want to understand how to get a voice like yours. While other times I get comments like, dude, your voice is very awkward. And sometimes people will be like, it's a very strong accent, where are you from? Two completely different realities. And it comes to a point when I have to understand that your voice, my voice, is going to be loved by some and it's not going to be loved by some. But what charisma comes down to is not being affected by either parties. It's you still carrying yourself the way that you would carry yourself in any different circumstances. That's what communication skills comes down to. When you are being socially awkward or what you consider socially awkward, you're thinking too much in this label or that label or this label. When you can detach from the labels, that's when you can choose, look, I'm not identifying solely with these labels. I'm identifying with my experiences first. I'm identifying with my authentic personality first. When you have that, then you can start using these labels to your advantage. I'm not a public speaker first. I'm Armani. I'm myself. And then I just happen to public speak. I just happen to tell stories. I just happen to tell other people about how to present themselves via their personal brand. But I never identify with those labels, because when you solely identify with the label, your ego gets warped around it. In order to be charismatic, instead of letting labels dictate your future so much, allow your self-awareness to do that. Charisma and self-awareness go hand in hand. How well you know you, how well you perceive you, will eventually relate others to you. When you love yourself to a point when you understand your strengths, your weaknesses, you're going to amplify the strengths, and you're either going to push your weaknesses to the side or work on some of them. When you have that sort of paradigm, you start becoming more charismatic as a byproduct. That's when other people's opinions sort of starts to melt away. You start evaluating, just like you did with labels, which labels help you, which labels hurt you. You do the same things with opinions. Which opinions are good feedback and which opinions are bad feedback. But ultimately, the whole labels of dork, nerd, geek, etc., those can become competitive advantages once you know who you are. That presenter in the beginning of my talk, I was talking about how he embraced being a geek. That's because at first he embraced his skill sets. In the social skills world, understand what you are good in if you want to become charismatic. Be the good kind of weird, the weird where you cannot be duplicated. No one can imitate you because only you are being you. Do not be an imitation version of someone else, because that is when you start unlocking your true charisma. Are nerds, dorks, and geeks bad? It's only bad when you lack self-awareness to manipulate it towards your advantage. Thank you for joining the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel, and I'll catch you on the next episode.